Welcome to this special AI edition of the Family Office Investor. Today, we are very lucky to be joined by Peter Bordes. He is the founder and the managing partner of Trajectory Ventures. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. Very timely to talk to you. One of the leading lights in AI and family offices and investing, so much in the news right now for family offices in general. And I know that you're sort of this hybrid of that. But for the family office today, do you think there is a role for them as investors in the AI space? And what do you think the best way for family offices to approach AI might be? And then we're going to get to exactly what you've done and how you see the landscape.
Well, I mean, that is a great question, and it's so interesting that everyone's talking about ChatGPT. It's like this AI awakening of something that's been there for quite a long time, but it's great to see it at the forefront. And also, as you know, my belief is that it's such an incredibly important part of this, now Orwellian, flat, digital, interconnected world, and especially now that data is this new asset class and the world is running in real time. AI is born on critical, in enabling that to happen. I think the way that family offices should think about it is this is an amazing opportunity, and especially with some going back to the concept of macro things that are happening within the investment community and as it relates to AI and or just earlier stage investing in general. And that is, there's a lot of money out there, and really the operators and entrepreneurs are looking not just for money, but for collaborative partnerships. And that's one of the things that family offices, I don't really think leverage up as much as they should. And you talk to fellow founders and operators, say, oh, you're with such and such, this is a great VC, and they talk about how your value add, and then they typically they talk about it, but maybe it's 10% of that. If I had partners that would invest and help me run parallel, that would be remarkable. And I think that's an amazing opportunity in today's economy right now, not only in AI, but in all the disruptive global innovation that's happening, because all family offices are built on, family businesses. Those businesses have far deep reach into industries where they can have influence in helping, these companies really, accelerate in a meaningful way.
So give us one or two examples where you've invested and you think it fits those parameters.
Yeah, so the theme that we're extremely interested in is all around infrastructure, and especially now that COVID and the pandemic's been horrible for humanity. The one thing is that it has done is it's now stepped on global disruptive innovation and this Orwellian world that's happening with 2 feet on the gas pedal. And the companies that are, instead of the things that sit on top of the infrastructure, we're interested in the components that sit underneath it and facilitate that intelligent, efficient liquidity, in the data that's running everything, whether it's fintech, ad tech, DevOps that facilitates that to be able to develop those technologies, and or like a great example is in fraud prevention and risk mitigation. As the world is becoming more and more real time than ever. For example, FedNow, because of what's happened in the last Q3 and Q4, has basically said, all right, enough. All banks, all financial institutions, you need to be able to identify and deal with fraud in real time. Meanwhile, they're all dealing with incredibly old legacy rules-based systems, and ergo, there are companies like Fraud.net that not only have built 100% proprietary AI, it's also based on a collective intelligence theme where the more companies that plug into the system, the smarter the system becomes. And it's almost self-learning, self-healing. And not only that, the intelligent layer, that AI, can take the legacy systems. Say, for example, Citibank has 30 different divisions with 30 different legacy rules-based systems in there. The idea of displacing or replacing them would take 2 years, which is like 20 years in today's economy. Instead, they allow them to plug into their systems and allow those components to be able to speak to each other, whereas the fraud would be able to get between those cracks of those different applications. And now they take that legacy infrastructure and they make it for today and tomorrow in the real-time economy. and then everything new that they're adding can either come through APIs of external or new applications that we're building. It's hyper flexible, hyper customizable, hyper scalable, performance based, which is is very unique to that model. Like, so those are the kind of things we're extremely interested in. We're seeing in other verticals as well that I would look for. Out there.
And so that's a vertical, that's sort of a broad segment. Are there one or two companies that you've invested in that you just get really excited about that maybe might later be doing more rounds of capital raise and could be an opportunity for other family offices? Are there one or two specific companies that you really believe in now that you've invested in?
Yeah, so I love multiple verticals, and I'll go to a couple of them that are my favorite. One in generative AI, and the other relates to the environment and our planet that we need to take care of so much. So, and a remarkable company, Anything.world, is a generative AI company that is completely democratizing the ability for anyone to create 3D animations for the metaverse, for gaming, for creators. My son could go on and literally start, without even knowing how to code, his own gaming lab. And the ability to use voice to be able to virtually create almost anything and then upload it into any of the gaming platforms. I can say, build me an island, put 4 homes on it. I want 8 cavemen and a 50-foot chicken, and I want the chicken to shoot lasers out of its eyes and like wipe all the houses out. And I can. It's amazing. Like the democratization aspect of that is something, as it relates to AI, is something that's also a very interesting theme. The other that's both EV autonomous and AI is Monarch Tractor. These guys are doing, and they're growing very, very fast. They're about to go do a round. It's a fully autonomous tractor. It reduces the cost of farming, by exponentially. It has an AI operating system in it, so it's constantly ingesting information about the crops and feeding it back. So it's reducing waste, reducing friction. The entire system that a farmer can sit at home and operate it from his kitchen table if he wants to. It's absolutely remarkable, and how that's going to completely change how ag tech's working. And what they've also done that's very smart is they're allowing other companies that are launching systems to be able to access their software platform, again, infrastructure, and enabling them to be powered up. And then similar to fraud.net, every time everyone's plugging into it, all that data and all that information about crops and yield enables farmers to become far more efficient. And that's I think is remarkable.
Great recommendations. And you mentioned this sort of Orwellian present/future that we're facing for all sorts of reasons. But do you worry broadly about the implications for AI? And as someone who's studied this market and this technology, are we headed for a Matrix like, Space Odyssey future where the robots take over? Do you think that's realistic? And how should family offices that have a moral or ethical concern about it think of that when they go to invest in AI?
Yeah, so while everyone is looking, at the ChatGPT, there are deeper conversations with the industry right now about ethics and integrity and like how does AI, address that from a humanity perspective. And it's going to be extremely interesting to see what happens there. And I hope that the right people in the governing bodies, which have a tendency to follow too late to address versus proactively, we need to proactively, both within the industry, state and on a national, and I'd say even global perspective, really proactively start addressing where this can go, because it can certainly go that way, if we don't understand it and actually have a plan of where it's going versus just setting it free into the wild, especially with these next generations of AI, that are completely self-learning are starting to come out. And I wonder what the world that my 11-year-old is going to live in. It's going to be, Jetson-esque, where you're talking to everything and he doesn't even need to go anywhere because it's all delivered and returned and he only needs to do this all day long. or do we find a balance between humanity and the machines, and they can take jobs away, but they can also augment humanity in a very positive way. And I think it's really ultimately up to us as humans and investors and entrepreneurs to dictate where it goes, especially within the next 5 and 10 year period.
Very well said. And then outside of AI, are there any other areas that you're investing in or where you see opportunities right now, whether it's in public equities, private equity, VC, private lending? Is there any other space where you're thinking of putting your money, or you have put your money, that you think could be lucrative or good opportunities in the next few years?
So two answers to that. On the earlier stage stuff, very much in the DevOps cloud infrastructure for ML, helping.
No idea what any of that means. How to translate DevOps into ML. Just translate to English, please.
Platforms that enable engineers to democratize the ability to develop machine learning or AI. So there's an amazing company to look at as an example of that is True Foundry, which is, it's very core to my belief that every company is going to be an AI company in the future. But right now it's incredibly difficult to develop. So how do you democratize that where anyone can access ML models and develop it? So they're working on that. That's a really critical component. Or the ability, people build these monolithic enterprise architectures, and then later they have to go and convert them all into much more efficient microservices architecture. They're interesting platforms from a development operations perspective or DevOps, that help facilitate that. So really interested in the pure coding, data engineering and that component, because ultimately that's where we're heading. As my wife says about our son, "Oh, you're going to be an artist," and I say, "Yes, you're going to be a data scientist," because they're the new artists. And then on the other side, that we're extremely interested. We've done one deal like this. We think of it as micro PE with venture returns, and we're looking at smaller companies between 1 and 5 million in revenue. They're growing at 20 to 30% a year. They're not growing on the hyper VC trajectory, and that we know that we can get involved and invest, bring our collaborative kind of group in, we call the collective, or our bench members, and have the ability to accelerate that and then be able to take them up to a 50% growth rate by not only investing but helping the entrepreneurs accelerate that. And why we like that is because while we're all getting older and we love our 100 plus X's, we're looking for 10x returns, but mitigating the risk on the downside because you have an operating, cash flowing, EBIT positive company.
And you mentioned you lived through the .bomb era, and I wondered to what extent, with the Fed hiking rates and a lot of risk that these startup companies and tech companies that are not profitable and have fairly high burn rates will start to implode. Do you worry that we could see a similar cycle, and are there risks for family offices that have invested in a lot of these high growth tech companies, whether at the startup phase, the private equity phase, or even the public equity phase, that we could see a lot of damage? And do you think that there's a way to avoid that, or is that going to be inevitable?
I think it's going to be inevitable. It'll be different. I mean, a lot of the companies that it's amazing. Here we go again. Didn't we learn our lesson?
Yeah.
Letting the perceived value get so out of whack with the tangible value that, inevitably there's that oxygen and it's going to compress. And you've got, Tiger and Coatue and these guys who are amazing investors, but coming in and just pumping things up. So those are the companies that we do not get involved with. We are looking for second-time founders. We even like founders who've, like Kevin, who's a founder of Airhouse. He built Ship, raised an incredible amount of venture capital, ran into a wall and all sorts of problems with his VCs when he was trying to move into a different direction. He's out there doing it differently. He's growing essentially the AWS of e-commerce infrastructure, and he's very focused in keeping that balance between the perceived value and the tangible value. Not that you're not investing heavily for growth, but you always want to maintain that balance, knowing that if I need to in 1 to 2 quarters, I can be EBIT positive, no problem. The other ones they're contracting. We're already seeing the down rounds. I don't think it's going to be as bad as the .com days. There'll be some that go out. It'll be less than them that don't survive. And you're going to see, I think, more of a reset and those overinflated, because there's some very good companies, but everyone got caught up in the usual thing that they could.
So one way to avoid that maybe is to find founders that are doing it a second and third time as opposed to their first rodeo.
Yes. And if they are doing it their first rodeo, just be prepared to help them, give them guidance. Don't just give them money, because as they start to find product market fit and they start to accelerate, and then all of a sudden, the venture money's all over them. It's very easy as a first-time founder, like Kevin will talk about. He said, I raised so much money that I became capital inefficient because I didn't know what to do with all the money. I'm doing it very differently, thinking of the roadmap, taking a structured approach to the value that I'm building, but the EBIT, which no one likes to talk about. I had one banker say, EBIT, oh, that's such a dirty word. You want to be measured? I said, yes, because I want to stay in business. That's a good thing, and it's different in that way now. There are a lot of companies that are running now at break even, going in EBIT because of that past experiences that they've had. So I think that's really critical in vetting deals and looking at that.
Yeah, and just going back to our first point, that's also where family offices can bring that collaboration and cooperation in those moments where an entrepreneur maybe just hasn't faced that kind of cash crisis before, but a family office that maybe had 2 or 3 businesses over generations probably has seen that several times, so they can bring that perspective. Peter Bordes, it always feels like I'm talking to the future when I speak to you. So great to have your input and your time. Peter Bordes of Trajectory Ventures, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Robert. Pleasure.